Hey y'all, my name is Kayla and welcome to my cozy chaotic corner of Booktober. In this series, I am attempting the impossible? To some perhaps, to me definitely. I am going to be sharing a different book with you for each day in the month of October. So if you do the math, that's 31 books for 31 days. Will I succeed? I guess you'll just have to subscribe and hit those notifications to find out. And we are delving into The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. This is a story of grief and horror and the familial ties that hold us together. Jiwon's life tumbles into disarray in the wake of her appa's extramarital affair and subsequent departure. Her mother distraught, her younger sister hurt and confused, her college freshman grades failing. Her dreams horrifying, yet enticing. In them, Jiwon walks through bloody rooms full of blue eyes. Salivatingly perfect male eyes. Eyes the same shape and shade as George's, who is Uma's obnoxious new boyfriend. George has already overstayed his welcome in her family's claustrophobic apartment. He brags about his puffed-up consulting job, ogles Asian waitresses while dining out, and acts condescending towards Jiwon and her sister, as if he deserves all of Uma's fawning adoration. No, George doesn't deserve anything from her family. Jiwon will make sure of that. Jiwon's hunger and her rage deserve to be sated. I am very intrigued to delve into this book with y'all. I have feelings. I don't know why, but I want to cry. But okay, let me process these feelings and we'll sit down and chat about The Eyes Are the Best Part after I process, okay? Okay, first let's talk about the players of the game. To start, we are from the POV of Jiwon throughout this entire book. Next with Jiwon is her younger sister Jihoon, and then we have her mother Oma, and then we have her father Appa, and then we have George, who is Oma's new boyfriend, and then we have Jeffrey and Alexis, who are classmates of Jiwon. So let's start with Jiwon first. She is 19 years old, just started college. She lives with her mother and her younger sister. They did live with her father until recently when he left her mother and says, I met someone else. Ugh, devastating. Like, honestly, I would rather have someone say, just don't give me a reason. Don't give me a reason. Do not ever tell me that you are leaving me for someone else. Even if that's the truth, you don't need to know everything. Because clearly if you met someone else and you're leaving your wife, it's because your feelings have fizzled out and you just don't want to be in that relationship anymore. Just say that. So we start the story out with this scenario happening where the father is leaving the mother, and he literally tells her, because she's kind of bugging him about why are you leaving me? Don't do this. I know I haven't been that good of a wife. I'll work harder. I'll do better. And he inevitably caves and just says, I met someone else. Eventually, Appa leaves Oma. One thing I forgot to mention is that they're Korean. Both Appa and Oma are from Korea. They just moved to the States. They know English, but not very well, so they definitely rely on their children, who are first-generation Americans, to be their translators. There is a lot of context and speaking to the experience of being a first generation, as well as the fact that her parents are not from America and don't speak English, and also traversing the landscape of America. And as a Korean woman, not only are you a woman, so you are
sexualized in the matter of being a woman, but also the sexualization of just the fact that you're an Asian woman, you know? So there's a lot of discussion around that. It does come heavily into play, especially when it comes to kind of random side characters that pop up, but also predominantly with George. So let's chat about George. One day, she was like reading this article, and this was shortly after Appa had left, and she's telling the girls how this woman had dated 100 different men, and in the article, it was stated that the worst type of male to date is like an Asian one, specifically Korean men. And then like the best men to date are the white men. Apparently, like, Asian men are more expecting of you. They aren't as humble and sweet and generous and kind. This is what Oma is reading, okay, y'all? And remember, she's from Korea, so all she's ever experienced are Korean men. She did marry Appa very young, so that's the only man she's ever really been with, so that's her experience. So reading this, she's kind of like, I'm sure, especially grieving the fact that her husband just left her for another woman, she's kind of like putting in scenarios where, like, oh yeah, Appa did do that. He was rude. He wasn't considerate of me. He was always very demanding. And so I have a hunch that she's like, I need to go find myself a good old white boy, you know? She works at a Korean grocery store, and she meets George at the grocery store. And Ji-won is like, Mom, what was he doing at a Korean grocery store? And the mom's like, he's very cultured. He wants to know, more about the culture. He appreciates other cultures. He was stationed in Seoul, Korea while he was like in the military. And Ji-won's just kind of like, okay, whatever. Weird. We meet George at a Chinese restaurant. That is where everyone meets for the first time. They go out for dinner. And George takes him out to this Chinese restaurant where he's like, oh, this is the best authentic Chinese food ever. There's another instance later on in the book where they go to another Chinese restaurant, and this was the Chinese restaurant that I believe Ji-won and Ji-hoon picked out. George is throwing a fit because when they have it, first and foremost, there was a white server at this one. The first Chinese restaurant he went to, it was just Asian women working there. But this one, I think it was called Walk and Roll, so I think it probably was more of like a chain restaurant. But this one, there was a white server, and he just threw a fit. He's like, no, we're never going to a place where it's not authentic cuisine. And Ji-hoon is like, this is actually really very similar to like what Chinese food is. And he's like, no, I've been to China. I have had Chinese food. And let me tell you, the other place was so much better than the actual Chinese food in China. During that instance, I'm like, just because it tastes better to you does not mean it's authentic. And one final grievance that I have with George, there's a lot more, but like the one that like really irked me right off the bat, the first time we meet Ji, you'll get it in a second, Ji-won and Ji-hoon introduce themselves, and he says their name, but he says them horribly incorrectly, and the girls try to correct him, try to educate him. And keep in mind, this guy literally is all about, we must respect other cultures. He apparently says he speaks Korean, but we find out he speaks it very poorly, and honestly, not at all. So, oh my god, this like pissed me off so much. He pretty much is like, oh, I mean, if you guys aren't okay with the way I pronounce your names, I'll just call you JH and I'll call you JW. Ugh. I don't think in any world could like literally anyone like George. Like, if you're reading this book and you're like, yeah, I like George. How can you like George? He's insufferable. Oh, one final note, George has very blue eyes. Ji-won's college days. So at school, she has two friends. Her first one his name is Jeffrey, and he seems all right at first, he inevitably becomes one of those guys who tells you that they're a good guy. And from my personal experience in the world, anyone who has to tell you that they're a good guy is either whiny and insufferable or genuinely not a good guy. And he was kind of both. Like, he wasn't a good guy. He was very whiny, insufferable. He ends up becoming, like, Jiwon's obsessed stalker. And it's just... However, Jiwon does use it to her advantage at the end. And then also Jiwon's other friend is Alexis. And Alexis, they're, you know, a little flirtatious moments here and there. It never like leads to anything, but it clearly shows you the difference between Jiwon and Alexis's relationship and Jiwon and Jeffrey's relationship. So I was going back and forth on if I really wanted to tell you guys what ended up happening. And I've decided I don't, because quite frankly, that was the best part for me. Like, this entire book, I was like, I mean, it's all right. It's good. It's probably going to be a 3-star book. But literally, the way it ended had me so shocked. I was on the floor. I was like, what the hell just happened? It very much was reminiscent of the ending of My Sister the Serial Killer, if you guys have read that book. Just kind of like that's how we're gonna end things. That's how things are ending. For me, it is a 4-star book. It's not a 5-star, but it is definitely like a solid high 4 for me. So I highly encourage you to go read it. Throughout the entire book, you're just you're gonna be like, I mean, it's all right. It's not the greatest, but trust and believe, the end will leave you floored. And also, this is a horror book, to be quite frank, though. I don't know, maybe I'm just, like, desensitized to the world, but aside from the fact that she's, like, obsessed with eyeballs, and some things do occur with eyeballs, I don't know, I didn't really find it to be horror? I don't know. Maybe my mind is, like, horror has to be really gory and very explicit, but I think perhaps Monica Kim did a more subtle horror element. I don't know. If you've read a lot of horror and you've read this book, let me know what you think. But for me, I was just kind of like, just kind of like a book that has some, like, dark and twisty elements to it. But yeah, the eyes are the best part. Again, I think it was the ending that really just, like, tied everything together. You do obviously have to read the whole book to get the ending, and I think, like, reading the entire book, like, more and more kind of details are stacked and stacked and stacked on top of each other, which is why at the end, you're kind of okay with how things end. Now, I will say, you're gonna be so annoyed and frustrated with Jiwon. She's not, like, a likable character. She's not the person you're really rooting for, but you're rooting for her over, like, everyone else in this storyline. That is that on that. So, with all of that noted, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, like the video, and I will see y'all in the next Booktober video tomorrow, hopefully. Y'all, I'm really shooting for 31 days, but honestly, like, we might make it to 15 days. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Even 15 days, I would be impressed with. But y'all, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see y'all in the next one.